lot of debt. In fact, if you look at the first wars, the world wars, World War I and World War II, then you will see something coming up called an IOU, or in other words, a debenture, a government bond, which it progressed into. Now, this World War I and World War II financing actually caused a major problem in the world markets. And that major problem is where Islamic finance and conventional finance actually depart very far apart. And that year was 1970. So in 1970, 1971, that called an end to what? A famous agreement called Bretton Woods. You see, for that period, during the Bretton Woods agreement, Bretton Woods, of course, today is the G8 or now the G20. Okay, that is what Bretton Woods has progressed into. But the Bretton Woods concept was establishing a gold standard for any amount of currency that a country would issue. It would be backed by gold. Hence, a US dollar would say, promise to pay the bearer. If you were living in that generation, you would see a dollar that would say, promise to pay the bearer. What did that mean? It meant that if you took a $100 bill and you went up to the gold repository in the US, which is Fort Knox, and you went off with a $100 bill and you passed it over the counter, then the banker was obliged to provide you with what? Gold. Worth $100, based on the going price, the spot price. But after the world wars, the US was so far in debt that Bretton Woods could not stand. In other words, when Charles de Gaulle sent a shipload of IOUs, meaning he held, the French had government bonds in the US, when they sent over those bonds to the US and they demanded gold, then the US would have fallen flat. Therefore, they quickly called a meeting, and that's what we saw as the Bretton Woods Agreement, or the collapse of the Bretton Woods Agreement, and hence no longer a gold standard. So I say that's where we departed even further. We were already far away in terms of the concept of riba. But now, we had no currency that was backed by any valuable commodity. So therefore, the fiat currency itself, by some scholars and commentators, now becomes even more weak, even weaker in terms of the stance of commodity versus monetary value. And that's why we say money has no intrinsic value in itself. Previously, you couldn't necessarily say that, because if it was gold, it does have intrinsic value. All right. So what happened here? They needed finance, and immediately Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is warning the believers, oh, you who believe, remember they have graduated. Since the Battle of Badr, they have actually graduated into a high level such that they were guaranteed Jannah, those 313 men. They were guaranteed Jannah. So even though later, in another digression, you hear that some of the Sahaba had made some mistakes and many were called to order, but they did those mistakes with the understanding that they had Jannah already. That's another lengthy story. But the issue here is, they go into the next battle. But we know already in Badr that they didn't have the amount of finance that the Quraysh had. They couldn't finance 1,000 horses. They went in with one horse or two horses and a few camels. So they didn't have the financing. So as a warning, as a precursor to the Muslims who believe, meaning coming out of Badr, they certainly believe, going into Uhud, please do not take finance using interest. That is the command. So Muslims are aware now that as long as they believe, and if they're going into the fight, into this battle of Uhud, they'll be allowed to do so on their own merit, meaning they will have to come up with the weaponry and the goods and the food themselves. They will not be allowed to finance that using riba. And of course we know that from the historical experience of riba in the times of the Quraysh, or in the manner in which the Quraysh dealt, it used to be doubled and redoubled. So we know that the first form of riba that Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam has actually denounced or considered no longer valid is the riba of whom? He says, Ammi. Nah, my uncle Abbas radiallahu anhu. So that is the first riba that is no longer valid. Which means that even the Muslims at the time were lending in riba. But you have to know the very specific story of Al-Abbas radiallahu anhu and his partner. Who was his partner? Who was his partner? Khalid bin Walid radiallahu anhu. Okay? Of course, Khalid bin Walid radiallahu anhu in Uhud, he fought against the Muslims. So we're talking long past. Of course, this was the farewell Hajj when Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said that all riba from this day forward is considered prohibited, and those that owe will no longer pay, and those that owe from both sides will no longer be paying riba. And the first riba that will be cancelled will be the riba of my uncle Abbas radiallahu anhu. But that riba, I want to bring into context here so you understand what it means, ad'afa mudha'afa. So Khalid bin Walid radiallahu anhu and Al-Abbas radiallahu anhu had lent dates, not money. In one transaction, they lent dates, okay, to an individual or some say a family. So when they came back to pay, they requested from Al-Abbas radiallahu anhu and Khalid bin Walid radiallahu anhu if they could extend the payment. Because if they had paid all of the dates back, they paid the loan back at that time, they would be in dire straits. They would be needy. They would be in a problem. So what they said was, please delay for us, but we will double it. And that was the tradition. That was the norm. Either the borrower would say that, or the one who lent. So either one, the lender would even require that as a condition or stipulate that as a condition, but usually at the end. It doesn't make it any better if it's at the beginning, but a lender would say, at the end when you came back, you said, look, I can't give you the 10 kilos of dates that I borrowed, I can give you 5 kilos and I can give you the rest in a month's time. Then the lender would say, no, keep the 10 kilos, pay me back in 6 months, but pay me 20. So that was the norm doing business. This was ribatul jahiliyyah, or riba al-nasi'ah. Asliyan, originally this was the riba al-jahiliyyah, and this is the riba that the Mufassirin say is directly related to the verse, this verse and the next verses we are going to discuss. So you understand that in context now? Ad'afan mudha'afatan. Okay, so it's doubled and then redoubled again. Of course, from here we know that like the verses on khamr or like the verses on alcohol, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala phased them out, and the verse that's connected to this is the verse that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands the Muslims not to consume alcohol when they go near salah. Did you get that? So you have to understand the fiqhi position here, the juristic position here. Here the juristic position is what we call al-juz min al-kull, a part from the whole. So if the whole, which we know later is going to be prohibited, which is all of interest, then this verse condemns or prohibits juz min al-kull, meaning part of the whole. The juz part here is the compound interest part. So in other words, this verse is the first verse of clear prohibition, but it is a verse of juz min al-kull, like that of alcohol, intoxication. So the verse that's connected to this, the one that says, don't go near salah when you are intoxicated, it's also juz min al-kull. It's very specific. Because when you go to salah, make sure you're not intoxicated. But there was no clear prohibition of alcohol as a whole. You can see the comparison. Any questions on this verse? No.
There are some people around who would like to say that compound interest is prohibited or haram, but normal interest is not. So how to understand in a meaningful way?
Okay, so that's what we're going to see in the second verse. Okay, in the last set of verses. So now we're going to move on to the next slide, which is of course the famous verses on Riba. I'm sure all of us know them. You might have even heard them repeatedly, you might have even memorized them. So how does it go? What is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala telling us in Surah Al-Baqarah, verse 275? أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الذين يأكلون الربا لا يقومون إلا كما يقوم الذي يتخبطه الشيطان من المس ذلك بأنهم قالوا إنما البيع مثل الربا وأحل الله البيع وحرم الربا فمن جاءه موعظة من ربه فانتهى فله ما سلف وأمره إلى الله ومن عاد فأولئك أصحاب النار هم فيها خالدون. So this is 275. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, those of you الذين اسم الموصول, those of you يأكلون الربا, who consume riba. We've already covered the word consume, devour. Consume riba. لا يقومون, you will not stand up يعني from the qabr. Okay, the Mufassirin say it is from the qabr. That means after you pass away, you will not be resurrected. لا يقومون إلا كما يقوم الذي, إلا except كما, as if يقوم الذي, those who stand up يتخبطه الشيطان and were touched or gone insane, شيطان من المس, from the touch of shaitan. You got that? Those of you who consume riba, you will not stand up on the day of Qiyamah. You will not be resurrected from your qabr, from your grave, except like those who get up, who stand up as if they were touched, maddened, insane by the touch of shaitan. So the Mufassirin say here that the touch of shaitan meaning as if you are possessed by a jinn. Of course, in Islam, we accept the concept of jinn and man. You know that well, of course. So now that we accept the concept of jinn, we also accept the fact that one can be possessed by jinn. This is an Islamic fact. So a large group of the Mufassirin say that this refers to one who is possessed by jinn. That means he loses his sanity and he's running around crazy, not knowing what's going on. Are we clear so far? The other Mufassirin, like very famous Mufassir Zamakhshari, who writes in Al-Kashaf, of course he is more of a literalist, meaning that he prefers to stay away from any of these, being possessed and that kind of thing. So he says, yes, it is one who loses his intellect, meaning he has no control over his conscience or his understanding of what's going on. He's standing up and he is unaware of what is happening around him. Meaning, he refers to it as one who is so enveloped, so deep into greed and the love of money that he cannot see outside it. Okay, that is the opinion of Zamakhshari. As I said, the other Mufassirin, of course, agree that this is a possession, either way, still losing your aql or your rational thought. ذَلِكَ بِأَنَّهُمْ قَالُوا. So it's not only because they consume riba. That means there's two things coming out from this verse. First of all, يَأْكُلُونَ الرِّبَا. And then it's also ذَلِكَ بِأَنَّهُمْ قَالُوا, because they say something, they say إِنَّمَا الْبَيْعُ مِثْلُ الرِّبَا. They don't do one thing, they do two things. They consume riba and they say riba is just like trade and profit. Now, it was their understanding, because the Quraysh couldn't see a difference. Because the manner in which they traded, when they lent out those dates and when they demanded double back, this was the way they traded. So they couldn't see the difference between riba and profit. It was so entrenched in their way of doing trade. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, be careful, because you will be lost when you stand up on the day of Qiyamah. Not just because you consumed it, but because you also said that it's the same as profit. And know this, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَأَحَلَّ اللَّهُ الْبَيْعَ وَحَرَّمَ الرِّبَا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, I am distinguishing for you the two things, riba and profit, riba and trade. They are very different. They are very different. In order to understand, one may state that وَأَحَلَّ اللَّهُ الْبَيْعَ وَحَرَّمَ الرِّبَا, the bay' and the riba difference is actually the concept of exchange. Iwad, mu'awada. So a mu'awada is basically an exchange. So one may say that the difference, and this comes in some commentaries, that you can understand riba and Bay', very simply. In bay' there is exchange of value for value. There is counter value. I buy goods, I pay money. That means the buyer receives the goods and the seller receives the money. There's counter value. But in riba, there is no counter value. One receives more money. For what? For time, for waiting, for ajal, for just deferred period. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is defining for us what riba is, or at least one form of riba is. So here, riba al-nasi'a, or the deferred riba, is clearly prohibited using the understanding of this verse. Whilst exchange where there is counter value, that is clearly legitimate. So for those who didn't understand and say there's a lot of confusion around riba, at least one form, and there were 3 forms at least available for around in the time of the Quraysh. Here, at least one form is clearly being negated. But something else is also negated here. You see, previously in 3.130 we were told juz min al-kul, compound interest is prohibited. But here we are told kul min al-kul, all types of riba. There is no justification after riba, meaning riba as a whole. It doesn't say riba ad'afa muda'afa, or it doesn't say riba al-basita, simple interest. It says riba, which means now that from the understanding of the definition, it is any type of riba that will be prohibited. Now, initially in our first lesson we talked about the meaning from the lexicon, from the dictionary of what riba means. And we said riba means something to grow. Here we are not talking about anything that grows. That's the warabat, as the water falls on the ground and the crops grow from there. Warabat meaning riba, it's growing. Here we're talking about loans and debt and trade, where anything grows because of deferment, and the only counter value is time. Do you understand the difference? So riba al-kul min al-kul, here we understand, so that's how we understand that it's no longer just compound interest. For those that say simple interest is allowed, simple interest is now being prohibited. In fact, this verse prohibits all forms of interest. All forms of interest. Okay. فَمَنْ جَاءَهُ مَوْعِظَةٌ مِّن رَبِّهِ فَانْتَهَى فَلَهُ مَا سَلَفَ. So, for those who turn back, فَمَنْ جَاءَهُ, he who has received the admonition from his Rabb, يعني موعظة meaning wa'az. You know what's a wa'az? In Urdu, what do you call it, Maxim? Wa'az. It's a bayan. In South Africa, we call it a lantana, which means a long discussion. Okay? Advice. Valuable advice. Wa'az. يعني nasiha. Important. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, for those that have received this valuable admonition, advice. Okay, and here we say advice as a command, not advice as, you know, I think you should do this, stay away. No, it's a direct command because we know earlier in the verse, of course, لا تأكلوا الربا أضعافا مضاعفة. So it's a fi'l amr, and here we know riba is haram. So this is very clear as a command. So he who has received that advice, that admonition from his Lord, and has fixed his way, and فَلَهُ مَا سَلَفَ, that means he has stopped. Intaha, he stopped his method of lending money for interest. وَأَمْرُهُ إِلَى اللَّهِ, then Allah will be his judge. Meaning, Allah will forgive him. وَأَمْرُهُ إِلَى اللَّهِ. So whoever stops doing it, whoever forgets about his previous gains and his business of interest, وَأَمْرُهُ إِلَى اللَّهِ, his matter, Amr إِلَى اللَّهِ, is for Allah to judge. Meaning, inshallah, Allah will forgive him. Allah is most merciful.
Please explain this fantaha here.
Fantaha intaha, that means he stops, he ends what he's doing of his salaf, which is his loan. Salaf is loan. Are we okay? وَلَكِنْ, but وَمَنْ عَادَ, عَادَ meaning to return, come back. وَمَنْ عَادَ, وَمَنْ عَادَ فَأُولَٰئِكَ, and those أَصْحَابُ النَّارِ. I don't have to explain that. Now it's important that we understand Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's use of ulaika. A simple word, ulaika. What does it mean?
Those.
Those. Now, Ulaika means those, meaning distance. So the Mufassirin say, like Al-Qurtubi, Imam Al-Qurtubi says, and even Shaykh Tantawi in his Al-Wasit states, that we must understand the simple word, the simple use of the word ulaika. In this case, ulaika refers to al-ba'ida, the ones who are furthest away from the rahmah of Allah. فَأُولَٰئِكَ أَصْحَابُ النَّارِ. You understand? هُمْ فِيهَا خَالِدُونَ. And therein they will reside forever. In khalidun, that will be their abode forever and ever, till eternity. No hope for them. Are we okay so far? Brief questions?
So today's situation of Islamic finance, we say that trade is like riba itself. Shouldn't we say? I mean, should we stay away from saying it?
You know, a lot of students often say, look at these banks, what's the difference? I mean, they're just using this word profit, they're replacing it, you know, from interest, taking away the word interest, putting the word profit and calling it halal. Look at murabaha. It's just another way to, so we always warn students, as we warn ourselves, be very careful when you say this is just like interest. Because those that said it before were reprimanded in the harshest of ways. Now, this does not justify the manner in which an Islamic bank does, you know, his business, in that he just doesn't care. And he says, look, it's profit, it's trade, you believe me, or else the verse tells you that you're heading for Jahannam. That's not true. We must criticize, because we want the best for it, of course, with the proper niyyah, sincere niyyah. But at the same time, we must be careful about what we're saying. See, murabaha in itself is a trade. So for us to say murabaha is just like interest, now we are falling in that. But if we say murabaha al-amr bil-shira is very close to the practice, now that's a different story. What is murabaha al-amr bil-shira?
It's not only.
You see, one thing that's not very, very well understood is that we only use the word murabaha. But a bank does not do murabaha. A bank does murabaha to the purchase orderer. Al-amr bil-shira. I mean, it's the order of the one who wants it, and that's why the bank acquires it to sell it to him. That's what the title means. So that murabaha is very different. In fact, in the banking circles, they don't use that terminology that we've just used. They just call it banking murabaha. But they have to say banking murabaha because it's different to original murabaha. We don't have to go into that discussion, but it is different. Okay? So there you can start questioning, you know, is it really a replacement of the word interest with profit? But either way, we must be careful when we're saying or when we're criticizing Islamic banks or trade and just calling it the same as interest because of this verse. That's the key takeaway from that point.
In other words, generalizing is the problem.
Generalizing is the problem. Exactly.
This verse, can we conclude that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving us an alternative? Can we? Like, is there any other alternative than riba, than bay?
So bay is a general term.
Yeah.
It's a term which is mujmal. So we know from here that in here it's referring to profit as compared to interest. But when we look at the term bay, then we understand holistically what bay means. Alternatively, what bay stands for is what the verse can be interpreted as in terms of its application. So it's not bay' alone. It's what bay' stands for. The pillars of the contract. The mutual consent, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, "Antara minkum." So all of these things put together are all the possibilities and alternatives that a Muslim can take part in. Okay? I mean, he doesn't say, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't say, وَأَحَلَّ اللَّهُ الْمُشَارَكَ وَالشَّرِكَ. He doesn't say, but partnership or risk sharing is permissible whilst interest is forbidden. But bay' stands for all of those things comprehensively.
Is it?
Which one is more general, trade or business? Buy or or business, like business.
Al-bay' or al-tijara?
Tijara.
That is depending on your application of it.
I mean, al-tijara could be used in this context as well, isn't it?
Yes, as I say in this case, of course from the verse itself we understand that bay' here refers to profit earned from sale, and riba is interest earned from sale, because at that time most of the loans were transacted in a sale way, in a sale transaction. So that's why the example I gave you was the dates. Okay? Because in effect for them they were selling the dates, but they were receiving dates back, but doubled and redoubled. You understand? Bay'in was salafin. That's why the hadith also Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam prohibits bay'in was salafin, a sale with a loan. In this way, the sale back to back with a loan. So you have to understand that you can't simply distinguish between bay' and tijara here. Here, bay', when you want to interpret it in the application, it's very broad.
I think because when they say bay', the literal meaning, maybe it does not include services, but when we translate it and interpret it as commercial transaction, it could be like more inclusive.
Absolutely. So remember, technically or linguistically, we know what bay' means. It's this definition. But in application of the fiqh from the verse, you know, it's why services, when we conduct any services, we're actually selling a service, or we're hiring out. So that's ijara, which is not mentioned here. So is it part of bay'? It's comprehensive. Any exchange transaction. That's why I said understand it as an exchange transaction where there is a counter value. Mu'awala. When you do that, then all forms of tijara and everything falls within that type of transaction. Now,
why, if it is deferred payment, the price can be increased? So isn't it because of the time?
yes, so time in a sale transaction where the asset or commodity is other than money, other than ribawi. So we have commodities, including money, fiat currency, that's ribawi. We call it interest bearing, ribawi. So other than ribawi commodities, when we have a commodity other than that, we can add an additional amount because it is a profit that we want to include over and above the sale price or the cost price.
I can understand it if it's retail, but deferred payment.
So even with deferment, because it's my asset and you saying that you're paying me over 1 year, then I'm going to charge you extra. It's my choice on how I calculate my profit.
But isn't it because of the time?
So time is not the thing that makes riba prohibited alone.
Oh.
It is the counter value of nothingness.
Because here time is attached to asset.
Here time is used in my calculation of profit on a recognized asset. If you want to understand it simply, it's like when you walk into any store, like an Apple store, they have different rules of doing business. They will all give you 2-year warranties. But you walk into a Samsung store, they might only give you a 1-year warranty. Like that, when you buy goods from there, they have specific rules. If you drop the goods in the store, then it's considered sold. So the other one says it's fine, you drop it, it's a mistake, we have insurance. So if you understand Islamic business is different to conventional business. In conventional business, they rent out money. In Islamic business, we don't rent out money. So purely on a commodity basis, we consider things other than money or ribawi items as something for sale. So when that thing is for sale, then we can add a profit based on the time or whatever duration or however we want to calculate our profit, it's up to us. As long as there is mutual consent in the offer and acceptance. That's all that's required. Okay?
Who is the audience in this verse?
Here the audience is specifically the Quraysh. Because it is they that came to the Prophet ﷺ and said, you know, you're not fooling us. We're doing this. We can't see any difference between bay' and interest. This is the way we trade. So it is directly that. Got it?
Sheikh,
Now,
with regards to the fourth ayat,
the fourth part, yes.
the fourth ayat, yes. How do we relate this to the current situation? For example, if Muslims who knew no better and then they had conventional insurance or took up investments that were interest bearing. So how would they?
Okay, so this verse, this part of the verse is specifically talking about the Bani Khudayma and the Bani Thaqif. Okay, they were dealing in interest, and the Bani Khudayma owed a lot of money to Bani Thaqif. And when the injunction came down, of course, the Bani Thaqif were ordering that the Bani Khudayma pay them the interest. But and they claimed that this contract was done before Islam, before they accepted Islam, so it still stands. The verse came down annulling that, so that Bani Khuzayma did not have to pay interest. So coming back, just to give you the real sabab al-nuzul of the ayah. But in your instance, of course, whenever you advise someone to stop, or if we stop something haram, then of course, for whatever duration we've already paid, that part has to be given off in charity, if it is accessible. So if you have a retirement fund that's involved in interest, then you have to realize that the interest portion is haram, not the entire retirement fund. Like that, if it's a conventional insurance premium that you paid instead of takaful, then the consensus of the scholars at the moment is that the premium that you've made is your money, and you can still take that back, but anything over and above that might have an element of interest or gharar, of course, or maisir, because of the three prohibitions of the Fiqh Academy. Okay, so depending on that, you can take back what you put in. There's no problem there.
So also maybe in converting conventional banks to Islamic, then the same rule should be applied.
Partly. It's a bit more complicated in the case of conventional to Islamic, because here the scholars rule that because there is an intention of a conventional bank to move towards good, then whatever has been existing can be purified in a specific type of way. And there's a whole list of ways. IOFI details conventional bank conversion to Islamic.
But if it's good, why didn't Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say that?
This is very specific to those that were being hard. They didn't want to give up their loan. They wanted the interest to continue. So the conventional bank will give up its interest. But what is existing remains. So that does not apply to this verse at all. This is future. فَمَنْ جَاءَهُ مَوْعِظَةٌ مِّن رَبِّهِ, meaning if you cut off now and there's no more interest, then you're fine. وَمَنْ عَادَ, but if you go back, then you're in trouble. So like the conventional bank converting to the Islamic, there's no going back. He's converting. So he falls, فَمَنْ جَاءَهُ مَوْعِظَةٌ, he stopped. فَانْتَهَا فَلَهُ مَا سَلَفَ. So the question is, does he keep his interest money and his principal? So here the scholars differ. And a large group of scholars, especially you will see in IOFI, they will say that a part of it can be kept because of what was earned was before an Islamic acceptance, so to speak.
But all of the interest to come should be
going channel to charity.
Are taken but channeled to charity.
Well, taken only if there are existing contracts that cannot become that you cannot come out of. Like when you go into a property and you have a liquor store in your property, you own the property, but you can't get the liquor store out because he is on a contract of 5 years. You still have to wait 3 years. So what do you do with the income from the liquor store?
No, but maybe I can do a rebate for the interest, but still earn the principal itself. Why should I also earn the principal?
Okay. So this is a lengthy discussion in the Tafseer of this ayah as well. Because the question is asked, okay, now what do we do? We've already committed and we have received this interest. So a lot of these scholars, in fact, Sheikh Muhammad Zuhairi in Fiqh al-Islam wa Adilatu also mentions this. So what was existing, you continue collecting that because you do not want to empower the conventional bank either. That means it will be taking your principal, it will be taking the interest that was allocated to you, and it will be using it for more haram. So there is the opinion that if it has already been accepted, meaning already part of a contract, then you accept the interest, not to keep it, but to give it out in charity. It's better to take it and give it out in charity than leave it with them and allow, that is the opinion of Sheikh Wahba, and his reasoning is this. He says that we have to understand that when a conventional bank becomes more powerful, then it doesn't become more powerful to help Muslims.
Yeah, but I'm sorry to be the advocate of the devil. If that's the same would be applied back at that time, the time of the revelation. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala might have said, then if your customer is a Muslim, then you فَلَهُ مَا سَلَفَ وَأَمْرُ اللَّهِ. But if your customer is not a Muslim, then you take the full interest because we will not be.
This is a lengthy argument amongst, of course we have a difference between the Mufassirin and the Fuqaha. Of course Shaykh Waba is, I'm quoting him because he's one of those unique individuals who sits on both lines, okay? Both sides, he's a Mufassir and he's a Faqih. So this was his reasoning for contemporary application, okay? It's important to note that the Mufassirin continuously state that this explanation of the Banu Khuzaymah and the Banu Thaqif, that means Banu Khuzaymah owed interest to Banu Thaqif, which was contractually created prior to them accepting Islam. But when they accepted Islam, then the illegitimate portion of the contract was removed. So between Muslim and Muslim, you cannot have an illegitimate contract, a clause. That gave rise to the Hanafi view that it is only a clause that makes the contract void. And when it's removed, then the contract is valid. Whilst the other three scholars, say that the entire contract is fasid or batil in the beginning. Another discussion.
So one small related thing. I have heard this view and I was shocked. An Islamic bank owned by a non-Muslim can finance non-halal things. Can an Islamic bank owned by non-Muslims finance non-halal things? Like a brewery.
Okay, so can an Islamic bank,
An Islamic bank owned by a non-Muslim because the contract is going to be between non-Muslim and a non-Muslim.
right, so here's the thing. The contract between the depositor who is Muslim and the bank funds must be Sharia compliant.
That's fine.
The contract between a non-Muslim and the brewery, that's up to him. That means that if he is funding the brewery through the dividends of the Islamic bank, that's fine. That's out of Sharia. Okay. You understand the sequence of events? So I know you asked, can an Islamic bank fund the brewery? The answer is yes, but how is it yes? It's because the initial contract between depositor and bank is Islamic, but between the owner and the brewery, that's between him. So he's ultimately taking his own dividends and he's funding. It is not as if the Islamic bank is using halal funds to fund the brewery. That will obviously be Muslim.
So if the depositors are also non-Muslim, then
you don't have. Then what is the need for calling it an Islamic bank?
Because that was the whole argument. Because the thing is, they say that it is above interest because the underlying contracts are gonna be risk-sharing based contracts.
That is just ridiculous. Because of course, we as Muslims we put a lot of emphasis on the prohibition of riba, right? So much so that we tend to ignore the other prohibitions. Riba in itself is not the only thing that's prohibited. Riba is prohibited as well as ghab al-fahish or excessive gharar, that's also prohibited. Maisir is also prohibited. So all prohibited services and products are fall within that. So therefore, we don't look at riba alone. We look at it holistically. That's why your Sharia screening criteria says industry screen first, then quantitative screen. So it's already failed the industry screen. No need to go to the quantitative.
Maybe that's why they want to change the name from Islamic to participative.
Maybe. Then they'll be safe. We can do as we like.
You're getting there.
That's Astaghfirullah. We haven't gone to the next verse. It's already 6 o'clock.
Can we proceed?
This is up to you. I'm okay at least for the next 15 minutes.
Sounds fun.
I don't know. I'm just giving you my time. Whoever needs to leave, please. Your class, please.
You can shortly relate the Hijri story which you are mentioning.
Okay, let's close off with the Hijri story very quickly. Okay, so Sister Chenia asked last week about Hijri. When is it? So it brought up a story. Abu Musa al-Ash'ari radiallahu anhu, one of the most prominent Sahaba. Okay, Abu Musa al-Ash'ari radiallahu anhu, very famous Sahabi. So he comes to Sayyidina Umar bin al-Khattab radiallahu anhu, who is the Amir al-Mu'mineen. And the year is around 638, which is the common era. Approximately 17 years after Hijri. There was no Hijri calendar at the time. So he comes to Sayyidina Umar, but what is interesting is the problem that gives rise to the Hijri calendar has something to do with Islamic finance. It was a debt transaction. So it was a debenture or a debt, a dain. And Sayyidina Musa al-Ash'ari comes and he says, Sayyidina Umar, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, we have a dain that is marked Sha'ban. You got it? But which Sha'ban? Last Sha'ban, this Sha'ban, next Sha'ban. So Sayyidina Umar said that we need to now organize ourselves in terms of a calendar. So he called the council together and everyone provided their opinions. How can we have a calendar that is clear? Because of course you had the Julian calendar at the time, but the Muslims didn't want to follow that. Firstly, they didn't follow a Roman god kind of structure. They were on a lunar calendar anyways. They were not on a solar calendar. So there was already a conflict. So Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anhu gives the suggestion. Why not work through a lunar calendar that starts with Muharram as the first month? Now, what happened was when the Hijri starts and Muharram is first, the Prophet ﷺ is documented to have traveled not in Muharram, in when? Okay, the historians, if you look at Ibn Sirin, if you look at At-Tabari, then and Ibn Hisham, you will see that he traveled in Rabi' al-Awwal. In Rabi' al-Awwal. And many of the scholars, the historians say that when he reached the outskirts of Medina, it was what date? The 12th of Rabi' al-Awwal. Okay, they give that. Now, we're not sure of the exact dates. But the fact is that most of them agree that it was around the time of Rabi' al-Awwal, which we know is not Muharram. So when is the first year of Hijri? It is the first year of when the Prophet ﷺ migrated. But it is not from the day that he landed. You understand? It is the first Muharram of the year of migration. That is the first year after Hijri. That was the story of it. So it came about due to debt. Hijri came about due to a debt transaction. Okay, the rest of the verses are here on the slides. The meaning is there. We have discussed it for those that have attended the previous sessions previously. يَمْحَقُ اللَّهُ الرِّبَا وَيُرْبِي الصَّدَقَاتِ. We talked about the total destruction of riba. Remember that for those that attended. وَيُرْبِي الصَّدَقَاتِ. And what is even amazing here is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, next one, yeah, no, next, and that, correct. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses the word riba to show that the word itself linguistically is not the problem. It is the application of loan and interest in sale. That is what's prohibited. You understand? You understand what I'm saying? See here. يَمْحَقُ اللَّهُ الرِّبَا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says He destroys. يَمْحَقُ means raises to the ground, there's no whisper of it. So the Mufassirin say that يَمْحَقُ اللَّهُ الرِّبَا means that there is no future barakah in it. On the day of Qiyamah, there's no reward for it. The other Mufassirin say, no, يَمْحَقُ اللَّهُ الرِّبَا means that not only is it destroyed in barakah in future, it is destroyed in barakah right now. Meaning that if you have riba with you, if you've collected riba, it has zero value. In fact, not only has it zero value, it will actually degrade and deplete your current earnings. If you have 100,000 with you and you have 10,000 of it in riba, then the 10,000 in riba will eat away into the barakah of your earnings such that there will be nothing left. You will not know how your money disappeared. So, you know, I have so much money, but it's just gone. It's like water. It's like water. So you have to think, is there any haram element in my wealth? So this is yamhaqullahu riba. وَيُرْبِ الصَّدَقَاتِ. Allah says, but charity on the other hand, it grows. But see the word Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is using. What word does He use to show growth? Riba. to understand that the word riba in itself is not the problem. It is the contractual application of riba in a contract that gives rise to the prohibition. Like in salaf. Salaf is what? A loan. A loan. So the salaf and the qard, all different words. So you must understand, it is not the linguistic terminology. It is the application of the terminology, like bay' and tijara. It is not bay', it's the holistic understanding of what bay stands for. And here, it is what riba stands for that will make it haram. Wallahu la yuhibbu kulla kaffarin athim. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses sigha al-mubalagha. Sigha al-mubalagha is an expression that shows severity. Severity. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tends to use it for most of the riba verses. أضعافا مضاعفة صيغة المبالغة. It's not just doubled, it's redoubled. Can you see that? And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses أحل الله البيع وحرم الربا. أحل وحرم. Direct opposites. صيغة المبالغة. Completely halal and completely haram. And here again Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses يمحق and يربي. يمحق, totally destroyed. يربى, totally growing. And then riba and sadaqa, sigha al-mubalagha, yani total opposites. And shadid, severe. Riba in itself, in its application, whilst charity grows in barakah. Can you see the complete differences? So the balagha, the expression of the verses in themselves, we can talk for ages. And again Allah says, وَاللَّهُ لَا يُحِبُّ كُلَّ كَفَّارٍ أَثِيمٍ. كَفَّارٍ أَثِيمٍ. This is sigha al-mubalagha again. It's not just one who disbelieves. It's one who disbelieves and he is a sinner, meaning he is an ungrateful sinner, a sinner upon sin. He sins and he sins so much so that he even ignores Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and he continues sinning. Wallahu la yuhibbu kulla kaffarin athim. All of them. Severity. Can you see severity in riba? This is balagha. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وذروا ما بقي من الربا. ذر يعني atom. An atom. ذرة. You know in Surah Al-Zilzal, مثقال ذرة. You know that? مثقال, the weight of a ذرة, the atom's weight. The smallest building block. The atom. Here, وذروا, any remainder of riba. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله. O you who believe, fear Allah. وَذَرُوا مَا بَقِيَ مِنَ الرِّبَا. And forget, waive whatever is the remainder of riba that you might have. إِن كُنتُم مُؤْمِنِينَ. Here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is directly talking to, according to Ibn Abbas, the Banu Thaqif, because they wanted the riba from the Banu Khuzaymah. فَإِن لَمْ تَفْعَلُوا. So here they were still, thinking, should we give it up? Shouldn't we give it up? And then the final verse comes down. فَإِن لَمْ تَفْعَلُوا. But if you don't do it, if you don't give it up, فَأْذَنُوا. فَأْذَنُوا, this is a warning. آذَنَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, hadith recorded in Bukhari, مَنْ آذَانِ وَلِيًّا فَقَدْ آذَنْتُهُ بِالْحَرْبِ. Whoever warns, whoever tries to insult and destroy my friends, وَلِيًّا فَقَدْ آذَنْتُهُ بِالْحَرْبِ. Know that I am waging war against them. A very severe and powerful hadith in Bukhari is mentioned. So here, same or similar, فَأْذَنُوا, be warned of a severe بِحَرْبٍ مِّنَ اللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ, war against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His Messenger. وَإِن تُبْتُمْ فَلَكُمْ رُؤُوسُ أَمْوَالِكُمْ. But of course, if you seek forgiveness, then for you is your رُؤُوسُ أَمْوَالِكُمْ, meaning your capital, your principal. Keep your capital, there's no problem there. لَا تَظْلِمُونَ وَلَا تُظْلَمُونَ. Okay? You don't oppress, you certainly will not be oppressed. لَا تَظْلِمُونَ. You ensure that you don't oppress others. وَلَا تُظْلَمُونَ. And certainly Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will never oppress you. You got that? Muslims say that we are in search of adl. You know adl? Justice. Say, why? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is adlan. Of course, He is most just and most fair. But a sincere Muslim is not asking for the justice of Allah. This is the parting word. You must understand this very well, especially in the month of Ramadan. We are not asking for adlan. We are not asking for justice from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because if we were to ask for justice from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, That means He will weigh all our good and all our bad, all our actions, and atoms' weight will all be weighed and judged. Do we want that? I don't think we want that. We're telling Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, don't be fair with us. Please don't be fair. Ya Allah, all we need from you is rahmah. All we need from you is rahmah. And this is what we ask for from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We talk about justice. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about justice right through the Quran, but justice between human beings. And of course, one of the first ahadith that one will learn from the famous Sahih Sitta is of course the verse of showing rahmah. When you show rahmah, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shows rahmah to you. You got it? We're going to end there, inshallah.